everyone. Welcome to episode number 7 of The Orbit. My name is Robbie Strazynski, and I'll be your host and moderator for the show, which is being recorded on December 16th, 2020. This is our final episode of The Orbit for the year, and as such, we decided to gather together a first-rate panel of poker media veterans to discuss a bevy of topics about the year that was. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce this episode's panelists. In seat 1, we've got Will Shillibier. Will is the editor-in-chief of PokerNews, the world's #1 poker media site. He's also a halfway decent badoogie player. Will, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Robbie.
In seat 2, we have Jeff Platt, a premier poker broadcaster. You can catch Jeff hosting shows on Poker Go, like The Big Blind and Friday Night Poker, as well as co-hosting the PokerNews podcast. He's also a professional light dimmer. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Robbie. You mentioned first rate. I'm not quite sure on that with Tuchman and I here, but we'll make it happen. Good to be here.
In seat 3, we have Donnie Peters, formerly of PokerNews and the World Poker Tour. Donnie is a longtime poker industry veteran, world-renowned pizza expert, and is currently the host of the Fives podcast for PocketFives.com. Donnie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Robbie. Thanks for having me.
Finally, in seat 4, we have David Tuchman. David's been doing poker commentary on high-stakes cash games and marquee tournaments throughout our industry for a decade and a half. In between gigs, he also moonlights as a stunt double for Colin Farrell. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you. A decade and a half. I sound very old.
Well, you guys all look great, and thank you very much for making the time to join me here today on The Orbit. I'm really looking forward to today's roundtable discussion, so let's jump right in with Will in seat 1. Will, what would you say was the biggest story in online poker in 2020?
I thought this was an interesting one. I think it'll depend where. I knew it would depend where I was on the table. I knew it would depend where I was in the table, whether or not my topic would be picked. So I knew I wanted to go sort of a bit out there so that other people can pick up on the COVID and the online poker boom. I'm picking Michael Adamo. If you really hone in on his year, it's been a really, really good year. Besides losing the biggest no-limit hold'em pot in online poker history, it's been pretty good. So he starts out being named the Young Achiever by the Australian Poker Hall of Fame. He wins the 50K challenge there. He comes second in the heads-up 10K on the WSOP Online. Before that, he came second in the Super High Roller Bowl Online behind Justin Bonomo, and then rounds the year out by winning the WPT World Online Championship Super High Roller, and then throwing in another second place in the EPT Online High Roller. So, live online, recognition by his peers, by the Australian Poker Hall of Fame. I really think that if it was, if COVID wasn't such a dominant thing of the year of poker, we'd be talking a lot more about him.
Interesting. Definitely a creative choice, perhaps an outlier, and kudos to you for thinking out of the box. It's important to do that.
It was a tactical thing. I knew that, like, if I picked COVID and was fourth and just had to sit here going, COVID as well. So, no, I was trying to think what would we been talking about if it was a normal year, purely on results, purely on talking points. And no, he's had a great year. What can we say?
Fair enough. Jeff, what do you think was the biggest story in online poker in 2020?
Well, I'll take the easy way out, Robbie, since Will opened the door for me and allowed me to make it happen. But I'll go with a specific angle. And I think the biggest story as far as online poker is concerned in 2020 is without question the successful transition of the World Series of Poker from the live format to the online format. I thought we saw incredible fields, not only in the US for the WSOP.com bracelet events, but also on GG Poker for the international events as well. We could sit here and argue for days and days and days about the value of the bracelet. And if there's a $100 event, should we award a bracelet? If there's a 10K event, but it's just got 20 people in it, should we award a bracelet? I just think that the World Series of Poker handled everything pretty well, all things considered. We're in uncharted territory. There is a global pandemic going on, and when you sit and for the turnouts in June for the WSOP.com events, later on for the GG Poker events, I think that you have to applaud the WSOP, and that's what will stand out to me when I look back at 2020.
Definitely a fair take. That's something that obviously got tons of coverage throughout the year. Donnie, you're with PocketFives.com, and of course, PocketFives, its main focus is what goes on online poker. So you guys are really clued in. I'm curious to hear your take. What was the biggest story in online poker in 2020?
Yeah, so it's interesting that Will kicked it off by saying we might all take COVID. Looks like we're going to have three different things to start. So I look at the rise of GG Poker. Now, I know that GG Poker, really put itself on the map with the signing of Daniel Negreanu last year in November. But while that flame has been burning for a little bit of time leading into 2020, it wasn't really until this year that they've really, if that's a GG Poker flame, they basically threw lighter fluid on the flame. And everything has been GG Poker. Every player's been wanting to play on it. They've solidified this really, really, really strong relationship with the World Series of Poker, as Jeff just highlighted. Not having just one event over the summer, but now having two events, with this one in December with the international leg of the WSP main event. So everything that GG Poker has done, I would say leading into 2020, it was like, okay, GG Poker is right behind PokerStars and Party Poker. Started 2020, I'm like, okay, I think that they've overtaken Party Poker. Maybe it's still of a toss-up. Now I really do think they've overtaken Party Poker in terms of that online poker operator and brand. And now, I could easily make the case, and I wouldn't, hurt someone so bad for saying that, GG Poker is ahead of PokerStars. Everything that GG Poker is doing nowadays just tells me that they're the brand that everyone else wants to be. That's where everyone wants to play. So I think, not only this year was huge, I think next year is going to be really big for them. So coming out of 2020, I look at GG Poker as a whole and I say that is the biggest story, their rise. And listen, obviously, a lot of their rise had to do with the circumstance that we're in. But you also had to take that bull by the horns and run with it. And GG Poker really did. So, I'm happy for it because I think competition is good at the end of the day. So having another person who's willing to throw their weight around as much as GG Poker is a good thing for all parties involved. It's going to get more people playing poker. It's going to get more people talking about poker. There's going to be more guarantees, big series, all that sort of stuff. We've already seen what they've been able to do with the World Series of Poker. So to me, the rise of GG Poker is the biggest story of 2020.
Definitely a fair take. And like you said, they signed Negreanu as an ambassador in November of last year. And I definitely remember at the time when he said, I signed with GG Poker, I was like, with what? With who? And they've come quite a long way in these 12 months, that's for sure. David, you have position on everybody. You've heard what they had to say. So I don't know if you already had a different answer prepared, but you could feel free to change it. What's the story of 2020?
I'm going to three bet them all. I'm in position. This is a great spot for me. First of all, I just want to comment on theirs. Adamo was definitely something I hadn't really, hadn't been quite aware of. Each and every year there's a player that captures our imagination and, kind of takes the world by storm. And this year there's been so many other things that I feel like we have forgotten about, like, who is that player of 2020? So that's cool. The World Series of Poker, I second Jeff's thought in that regard. Just simply, Jeff and I kind of tandem the World Series of Poker commentary over the summer, and it was so much fun. It surpassed my wildest expectation of how it would be. When I got approached to do it, I was like, okay, this will be fun. I'll get through it. And I had a blast. I really enjoyed it to the point where, like, I was actually watching it and then commentating on it. And it was really fun. And I had a blast with it. And, the whole two main event thing was a little bit weird, but I give the World Series of Poker a ton of credit. I think they handled an impossible situation quite well. I've gone on for ages about the whole, like, what's a bracelet worth? And as far as I'm concerned, all bracelets are not created equal. They never have been. It makes no difference. I think this is great. As far as GG Poker, I think, they're doing a great job. The Dan Blazarian thing, you kind of wonder about that. I just did a podcast on that whole thing with Vanessa Cade and Jess Wellman. But from a business standpoint, it's genius and it's brilliant. And, from everybody that I talk to, unfortunately I'm in California, so I can't play on it. But from everybody I talk to, they love it. It's so much fun to play on that site. So you got to give them that. For me, the story of 2020 is the proliferation and of all these heads-up challenges. The Galfond challenge has been a lot more fun than I think anybody expected, starting off with that match versus Vanny Viti and then just going off that. And then obviously this wasn't online, but Poker Go kind of took the heads up challenge, and they had the Antonio versus Phil Hellmuth. And, watching Antonio lose and lose and lose was really fun. I like Antonio, but losing to Phil Hellmuth had to be painful. And then, obviously what's going on now with Doug Polk and Daniel Negreanu as well. So it just feels like the poker world in a very Darwinian way has taken 2020 and COVID and said, okay, we'll evolve and we'll survive and we'll be fine.
For sure. Another great take. And look, as we always say, if you don't have the cards you want, if you're not dealt the cards you want, you got to play the hand you have. And certainly, a lot of merit to that. And 4 really great, interesting takes, guys. Thanks so much for kicking off the show in such a wonderful manner. We are going to shift our focus in topic number 2 from online poker to live poker. Live poker, as we know, it's still kind of stop and go in the process of coming back. Operators are doing their best worldwide to comply with whatever local regulations there are. We're seeing plexiglass, masks, fewer people at the tables, outdoor poker tables. Some markets, they're seeing some larger scale tournaments return. Some markets have never even opened up just yet. But even what there is, with all of these regulations and limitations, even that is being met with question marks by a lot of people. But as we know, the vaccine is here. That's the good news. Inoculations have begun. The question then is, at what point can live poker, get back to normal to the extent that even if some individuals aren't personally ready to head back to the tables, there's no longer any sort of shame or negativity associated with those who decide to run the event. So at what point do we reach that level? Jeff, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, a couple things, Robbie. First off, just to answer the basic question, I think it's very reasonable for us to look at the summer of 2021 and perhaps a little later in the summer as that tipping point, as that point where we can be like, okay, we're back. Live poker is back. A strong majority of the poker players will feel comfortable heading to their live poker venues to play cash games or to play tournaments. And the ones that don't feel comfortable, obviously, have every right to stay home. You said it, Robbie. It's going to be all about the vaccine, right? It's just that simple. If the vaccine, at least in the United States of America, is able to be distributed at a mass production level, if we can get that going by the spring, get that going by the summer, I can see a world where we have the 2021 World Series of Poker, perhaps starting a little later than normal, but being a full-scale poker event series like it usually is, like we're used to in one series that will absolutely set records. Now, if we're a little bit slower on the vaccine, that's just not going to happen. We go as far as the vaccine goes. As far as the live venues who are going ahead and putting on tournaments now, I know Donnie and I are in Vegas where the Venetian is running some events, where Bally's has started to run some events, where some of the poker rooms are open at the Wynn and the Aria. I don't feel an overwhelming sense of shame or negativity really from the poker community. I see it as these guys are running a business. They're trying to make money. We're trying to keep poker alive. If you feel comfortable and you want to go and you can play in a mask and there's plexiglass and you play 8-handed, there's hand sanitizer everywhere, then that's fine. There's a small percentage of the poker community, and it's always a very vocal one that I think makes it seem like there perhaps is a little more negativity associated with these live poker rooms putting on poker during a global pandemic. But overall, I see most of the poker community being okay with everything that's going on.
Interesting take. Well, it's possible that some of our viewers or people who are listening to this show may be thinking, well, there's an obvious answer to this one. But just like when you get a poker hand, there's infinite number of ways to play it. So that's why we're asking these four guys. Donnie, what are your thoughts?
So I'm kind of in lockstep with Jeff. I wonder if we're already there as a community. You know, I say that because a lot of the shame and negativity that you're referencing, I don't feel like it's the majority feeling within the community. I do feel like, as Jeff pointed out, there is that vocal minority that is, you know, kind of looking at people and saying like, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Why are you playing live poker? Why are you opening poker rooms or whatever it may be? But, you know, if tournaments weren't being held and more tournaments are coming, poker rooms weren't operating, you know, being open. And then also once they're open, they're obviously staying open because we haven't seen, you know, a large amount of them close. So that tells me that things are working, which tells me that the community has accepted the fact that if they want to take the risk, then they're going. You know, if one person says, hey, shame on you, well, they're kind of ignoring that and they don't really care how they think. Now, on the other side of that, I also feel that there's always going to be that vocal minority that still looks at this in a shameful way, in a negative light. And that honestly can go on for years. I mean, like it could be something where even when the vaccine gets here, even when we learn to deal with COVID-19 in a much better way, people still look at live poker and say, no, that's still a place where if you're going to get sick or you're going to get a disease, that's where you go. I mean, look at the Rio every summer. We always joke about the Rio flu, right? Well, people get sick all the time, and it's just because you're in a large area with a whole ton of people in close proximity. So, you know, stuff is going to get passed around. So there might be some people that look at it from the outside and say, you know what, I'm done with live poker. I'll just continue to play online. You guys are all crazy. So that part, the vocal minority that Jeff pointed out, might go on for, you know, throughout the whole of next year, maybe even longer. But as a community, I kind of lean that we're there. You know, people are ready to get back to playing live poker.
Right. That's definitely an encouraging sign to hear. And of course, our first two folks that we heard from on this topic, as mentioned, based in Las Vegas. David, you're based in the other poker mecca of the United States in LA, different restrictions and limitations and regulations than in Southern Nevada. What are your thoughts as far as, you know, is there shame associated with it? You know, when is it time that, you know, okay, everyone can just go ahead and do as they please and not worry what, you know, someone else is saying, oh, you're a super spreader or something?
You know, I don't always agree with Jeff Platt's way of playing a hand, King Deuce, but
too soon.
But this is a case where I do agree with his line. This is just a spot where I do think the science is going to dictate where we're at. I think the vaccine is going to dictate where we're at. You know, just like him, I could see a situation where, you know, if it's safe, the World Series launches off in June. If it's not, then, you know, maybe we push it back to July. That's certainly a possibility. You know, I foresee, I'm optimistic that, you know, the second half of 2021 will be an absolute boom. It's funny. Somebody tweeted and I retweeted this, like, my New Year's resolution for 2021 is to spend less time with my family. And I think it's absolutely true. And I think for a lot of people, that's going to be the case. Like, I want to go play. Where can I go to play poker? And, you know, obviously I work with
children, David.
Yeah. And they can hear me. I love my children. Good. Go away. Just for a couple of minutes, please. But, you know, I mean, whether, you know, I do a lot of work with 888 and, you know, whether it's me traveling to Europe and I can't wait to do it, I could see the second half of 2021 being phenomenal. Again, I agree with both Donnie and Jeff about the negativity. I think just like when it comes to politics, you hear the minority is the loudest more often than not. The extremes are the loudest. I think most people are at the point right now where, listen, if you feel comfortable playing, go play. You know, I mean, there are, you know, Target's open, Home Depot is open, some restaurants are open. You can do takeout. There are people that need to work and there are people that need things essential. And if you want to play poker and if you want to work there, that's fine. That's cool. To each their own. So I mean, maybe I'm missing it, but I don't see that. I have not played live poker yet. And I won't until, you know, for a few months, but I'm certainly missing it and I'm hoping it comes back soon.
Seems like the Americans on the panel have a unified line of thought. Will, you're across the pond in jolly old England, of course, another hub of poker in the world. I think perhaps you bring a different type of perspective. You may have the same answer, but you're a little bit more in tune with what the scene is like in the UK, at least, and possibly Europe. What are your thoughts?
No, I always knew that my answer would be slightly different, knowing the other three gentlemen on the podcast. On a personal level, I couldn't see myself going out tomorrow and playing poker. The UK and Europe, a bit like America, varying degrees of severity, been hit in different ways at different stages of the pandemic currently. The first quarter of 2021, there will be no live poker in Europe. I would find it very surprising if any tournaments traditionally held in those months go ahead. My bellwether would probably be EPT Monte Carlo and what PokerStars decide to do with that. If it goes online, then I agree with everyone else in that a later World Series is more likely. If it goes ahead, I think it's great for poker because it would mean that the poker landscape in Europe is changing for the better, and as a result, you'd like to think, favorably about the outlook for poker in the United States. That being said, poker in the United States is going on. PokerNews are currently live reporting on events across America, and to me it's very strange. Again, I don't see any of the shame or negativity that you alluded to. I see caution and people who are perhaps a bit more cautious as a person towards their health and the risks associated with COVID. And I think everyone has to take that on an individual level, whether or not you are going to the event as a player, going to the event as a member of the media, or operators and casino staff running the events. I think we can all be very happy that poker is back in the format it currently is. My gut instinct is to say that it is for the better. But I have to square that with the fact that if it's not happening in Europe, almost across the entire country, across the entire continent, then I struggle to see why it's happening in the United States. And that's not a statement on the politics or the society. That's just logic. I find that very strange. But baby steps. Some poker is better than no poker, at least when you look ahead to the outlook of normal poker returning. Right.
Well, we could definitely all agree that more poker is better. And obviously, liquidity is the most important thing we got to have is, for poker to survive, you have to have enough people who are willing to play. So I guess it's a little tough to be the Nostradamus and know exactly when that date is. But there does seem to be a good sense of what that point would be. So thank you guys very much for those opinions. Guys, we're about halfway through the show, and we hope you're enjoying this episode of The Orbit thus far. We'll be right back after these messages. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode number 7 of The Orbit. We're halfway through the show. We hope you're enjoying it thus far. And now it's time to get on to topic number 3. Gentlemen, out with the old, in with the new. 2021 is right around the corner. Let's hear your predictions for what are going to be the biggest stories in live and online poker next year. Donnie, take it away.
So building off some of the stuff I mentioned earlier in regards to GG Poker and going with the online stuff first, I think we start to see GG Poker make its first footsteps into getting into the U.S. regulated online poker market. I get the sense that that's where they want to go. I don't know why you would sign Daniel Negreanu, which happened in November 2019, if that's not where you ultimately wanted to get to. More states are opening up legalized online gambling. GG Poker, as I mentioned earlier, is continuing to be a really big player in this space, to charge for. They already have the partnership in place with the World Series of Poker. So it's tricky because I don't know if they'll get in and launch in 2021 because just of all the hoops you have to jump through, the regulatory process is a long one. That said, if anyone can do it in a faster timetable than some other operators, I think it would be GG Poker, just because they have that relationship with Caesars and the World Series of Poker, and it seems to be one that's growing. So I expect, GG Poker to announce, start to make some footprints, file for licenses, whatever it may be in, the New Jerseys, the Pennsylvanias, and even in Nevada or somewhere else that we might not know of just yet, maybe in Michigan, something like that. Get them in there, hopefully raise the bar, hopefully have that platform that everyone's talking about available to the Americans. David mentioned it earlier, not being able to play on GG Poker in California. No one can play on GG Poker here in the States. And it's kind of a bummer when you see all this stuff going on because you're like, I want to play for those bracelets or those prize pools or those high stakes cash games, or, I want to use those emotes and whatnot on the software. Like it's very cool. It's very forward thinking. So I would expect them to get in. So that's my online poker take. Live poker take, I don't really see how it's anything else than the World Series of Poker returning. I just think that I know it's something that we've had before and we've had it for a long time, but because we haven't had it, it's been taken away from us because of the circumstance that we're all in, to really no fault of anyone. Just it coming back, that summer camp that we all call it coming back, is just going to be a bigger story probably than it's ever been before. We talked about it, with the last question. People are really, really, really itching and scratching just to get out there and play live poker. Some people are, some people still can't. So once that World Series of Poker comes, hopefully the vaccine is, spread out and available more by then. And, people are able to get out there, feel comfortable and all that sort of stuff. It might come at a later date. It might come in July. It might come in August. The schedule may be lessened a bit. We might not have whatever it is, 80 events. We might be dumbed down to 50, something like that. But just having it back there, having everyone come out, being able to play, the Colossus, if that returns, will be huge. The main event, if that returns, that'll be huge. All that sort of stuff. So I think just the idea of the World Series of Poker coming, that really gets me excited as the biggest story coming up in 2021.
So for live poker, that's a pretty clear take. For online, just to sort of click back to you, a question. Should GG move in the direction that you suggested, do you think that would be in tandem with them withdrawing from, let's say, some less than regulated markets?
Yeah, I think, the U.S. is that still, it's that big whale for online poker operators, right? So even though things in the U.S. aren't on a federal level or on a state-by-state level, if you can get in and start capturing those markets, Nevada, New Jersey, Pennsylvania are the biggest three right now. There's going to be more to come. Then, yeah, I think that's going to be a really big win. If they can somehow couple that with partnerships with the World Series of Poker, doing stuff more with Daniel Negreanu, I think that's going to be where they're going to start seeing really big gains in the future. And I think a lot of their moves recently, the Dan Bilzerian one is a good example of this, where they want to make splashes that win for the company from a business perspective. It may not be the best PR thing, not that getting into a regulatory state is going to be a PR hit to them, but they're going to do things that are going to really help their bottom line. And if they're able to get in these markets, challenge the poker stars and the party pokers and whatnot on U.S. soil, then that's going to be where they feel like they need to be and where they're going to want to go.
Got it. Well, those are Donnie's takes. David, let's hear, what do you think? What's your crystal ball say as far as online and live poker in 2021?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, I'll go off a little bit of what Donnie said, and I'll try to extrapolate on that. But, Michigan obviously just legalized, and that's kind of an optimistic lookout point, I suppose. And they're also slated to join Nevada and New Jersey, so you can play all three of them together. And if Pennsylvania can somehow get their act together and join that as well, you start to build a pool. And we all know, poker is one of those things where, the more players you have, the more action there is, the more exciting it gets, and it just kind of feeds off itself. And, I think there's 25 or 26, Donnie would probably know better than me, states that have now legalized online sports betting. or some form of sports betting now is legal in about half the states in America. And I wonder, while poker is never going to be the apple they go after because it's just not enough revenue, they don't get enough out of it. I wonder if that is kind of a building block for them, though. And if Michigan can join Nevada and New Jersey and start to show numbers that are quite impressive, is there some pressure on other states to be like, listen, we already have sports betting, we already have a lotto, why not? So I'm optimistic about that, especially when you look at a GG and you wonder if that pressures other online companies to start pouring more money into it. And at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, money changes things. And if there's a lot of money involved and you pay the right lobbyists and the lobbyists do their job, you wonder if that kind of starts the domino effect as well. And I do think that if you can get 4 or 5 states involved, the dominoes might fall and suddenly we get 7 or 8 states and it becomes really exciting here in the States once again from an online perspective. Continuing on that, I wonder, going off what Jeff said earlier and how well the World Series did, I think the World Series online bracelets are here to stay. I think live is an amazing thing, and I think it's going to – I'll get to that in a second. But I think what we saw and the success that the World Series of Poker had and how much excitement there was around bracelet events online, I don't think it's going to be as big, but I do think there will be an online bracelet series each and every year, and I think that the World Series of Poker would be foolish not to have that. I think it was something that excited people, and people really enjoyed it. There's still that prestige with winning a bracelet, whether it's online or live. And as far as I'm concerned, why not? From a business standpoint, it's a no-brainer. And from a poker fan standpoint, why not have it? People like it. And I'll tell you, for myself, next year, if I can't play in California, I will absolutely rent an Airbnb in Lake Tahoe on the Nevada side, and I will play those events. Live.
Can I if I jump in before you
please jump away.
Live, I think a lot of it has been made in the past of, if we can get one of those big states, that will be the domino that leads to further legislation. But I kind of think that this year, in terms of the renewed interest by the states that have it legalized, with the success of the World Series online, like you said, it actually makes it more attractive to other operators to get into the states that are currently operating in order to put more weight behind their offerings. The liquidity Robbie talked about, by getting players actually playing poker, joining up the markets and creating a much bigger US online legalized poker playing community, might be the more sensible way around it. There are I'm saying this with a lot of caveats, with lobbyists and state legislature and the state of the American political landscape, which I am in no way qualified to talk about. But putting them all together, it might be, the sum of the small parts really, really banding together. I don't know. I know Donnie is probably best placed of everyone on the call to talk legislative efforts, but I was quite surprised, or quite relieved, maybe is a better word, that one of the topics wasn't what states are going to legalize American poker, because it seems to be like every year that was a topic that gets banded about, about next year. But yeah, besides Michigan, I think it's just establishing the ones that are there, and with the appetite that the World Series online showed, I think people will begin to stand up and take notice of the ones that are currently there, as opposed to setting their sights on a California or a New York.
Interesting. Well, we try to be very discerning with our topics, of course. David, what is your live poker?
I was going to comment on that. And obviously Donnie can comment as well if he wants. I just think, Michigan's a big fish, and the from a logistics standpoint, where it is in the United States is also quite significant, because Jeff and I were quite aware of the numbers we saw at the World Series of Poker, and it was kind of astounding considering that it was just New Jersey and Nevada. And people actually traveled to those states to play in World Series events. The hunger and the thirst for those events was clear. And if you look at from geography standpoint, Michigan is really in an interesting spot, because suddenly you can attract a lot of that Midwest population that wants to play that maybe doesn't want to go to New Jersey and doesn't want to go to Nevada. I also think the numbers this year were so impressive considering people were loath to travel because of COVID. So imagine an online series where even just 3 small fish, and like I said, Michigan's pretty big, but imagine 3 or 4 states are there and people are not afraid to travel. The numbers could really be through the roof. I'm just pretty excited about that prospect. Anyway, to further my my thing on live poker, I'm going to go off what Donnie was saying, and I kind of foreshadowed my answer from the second topic we had. I think the second half of 2021, and I'm not going to give you an exact date because I don't know when the vaccine is going to be. Everybody's going to have it, but I think the second half of 2021 is going to be an explosion. Like I said, I just think people are rearing up and ready to go. And I think in many ways, back in like 2003, 4, and 5, when people got their first taste of poker online, I think some people got that. There was an online poker boom. And I think you couple that with people just wanting to get out of the house, wanting to travel. And I'm really quite excited about the second half of 2021 from a live perspective. Whether that's August, whether that's September, maybe it's the last third of 2021. I am pretty excited about that.
Awesome. Sounds good. Will, why don't you go ahead and let us know what do you think's in store for us in 2021?
From an online point of view, I think operators will need to really learn to continue to, not learn to, but operators will need to continue to innovate in order to attract customers at the same rate that they did this year. They sort of, they really stumbled onto, I hesitate to say fortunate circumstances considering the loss of life that COVID has had, but a scenario which saw their and our industry boom on the online world. And in order to keep shareholders or people involved in these huge operations happy, they will still need to show that they can acquire customers through their products. And also, the reverse of the same coin on that topic is that they will need to retain the customers that they have acquired. Sheer lockdown leading to them playing online poker is not going to work in 2021, you would hope. So you will have to have exciting and new things to show to them. If all of the sites rolled out the same promotions that they did this year, which budget-wise they obviously will not have, then the online poker will turn very, very stale very, very quickly. And if, like David says, that live poker isn't going to return until mid to late 2021, and that's putting an optimistic slant on things, then online poker is still going to be the story for at least the first half. And so it will be down to the operators to say, hey, look, this is going to be what our plan is. This is how we attracted them last year, and this is what we're going to do to ensure that it is still an attractive product for poker players.
Sure. I'm sure some very interesting meetings are taking place in the boardrooms of all the online poker operators.
Hey,
Jeff?
Robbie, can I just jump in quickly?
Yeah, absolutely.
So just building off of what what Will pointed out there with being able to retain everyone that these operators have gained throughout the circumstances. There are some brands that are uniquely positioned. World Series of Poker, WPT, even PokerStars. Will brought it up earlier with Monte Carlo. Just being able to take those live events and then transition them online. I think it can still really be a big draw. Although it is, like Will said, it's the same as they did this year. Something like, David pointed out, these online bracelets are here to stay, right? Well, what about an online series or just an online main event in December, like it is right now? That sort of stuff can be something that is it's like a breakthrough in a way. It came from unfortunate circumstances, but these live operators, or the operators that dealt in live poker a lot, mainly World Poker Tour and WSOP, and then obviously PokerStars, but they do have the online side as well. They've really been live poker first. And now this has forced them to think outside the box, think differently, and go digital. And that could be something that benefits a lot of people. I mean, how can we all play? You know, we can all play for bracelets from our homes as long as we're in an area where we can play, or we can play for a World Poker Tour title or an EPT title or stuff like that. So it might be the same, yes, and I would agree with Will that like a lot of the same promotions, like deposit this, get this bonus, all that sort of stuff, probably won't work the same. But if you can continue with some of the positive changes, like the really big positive changes, the bracelets online, the WPT titles, the EPTs, that sort of thing, that can continue to be a draw and be a lasting thing for not only next year, but, you know, years to come. Like this can be the new norm. Every year there's so many bracelets online. There's an online main event that takes place in December, or maybe it's some other time of the year. And then there's also WPT titles and EPT titles that are played online.
I think the addition of an EPT online is almost something that I think in an interview that we had, they said that it was something they'd been thinking about, but obviously never really executed. And over the years, we've seen the number of EPT drop down to them focusing on the three big ones: Monte Carlo, Barcelona, and Prague. Add Sochi into there for the sake of argument. And so down to 3 EPTs a year is really sort of a drop from the heyday where I think there was like upwards of maybe a dozen, 10, 11 events a year. And it seemed like there was one every other week. And they would, you know, on the live stream when I was watching, they say, oh, we'll join you next week when we're in San Remo or Deauville or Villamora, you know, all of these, to me, old school poker destinations. And so for them to be able to add EPT online to their schedule like that, because COVID has made it suddenly the only way that they can get the EPT brand out there, actually that suddenly it's boosted their brand online, it's boosted the EPT's brand, and suddenly you have one extra stop. So again, like Donnie said, these brands that have been maybe not tentative is the wrong word, but have been safe by not really putting, you know, a toe into the water of online. Again, that's probably badly worded, but hopefully people will understand where I'm coming from. But the WPT, the Spring Championship, the World Online Championships, we've all, you know, everyone take a shot the number of times we've mentioned the WSOP online, but the point still stands. They've all really excelled in what has been a really great year for online poker, and it wouldn't have been the same without these operators and these sites going, let's just put those online and let the attraction of being a bracelet winner, being a WPT winner, being a EPT online winner, let that be a draw in and of itself. Plus, people want to play online poker in 2020. So it's been a good year online.
I mean, just to carry out that, I mean, first of all, I mean, oftentimes great things come out of tragedy. And, you know, obviously that's what's, been much of the story of 2020. The question I have for any of you guys, probably Donnie and Will more so, is how concerned should we be? How concerned should the operators be about the integrity of the game, whether it be bots or charts or ghosting or whatever it might be? As somebody who has always really played live but is somewhat clued into the industry on an online basis as well, it's always been a concern of mine, and I know that it is some people as well.
Yeah, I would say, you know, it's something that operators, specifically online operators, are always going to need to be concerned about and should always need to be concerned about, only because there's going to be new technology. There's going to be people trying to push every single edge, and that predominantly happens in the online world. So it would be silly for operators to ever be like, okay, you know, we're past it. We solved that problem. You know, our game is, you know, as safe as can be. The integrity is upheld to the highest level. Well, it might not be. And I'm not trying to scare people off. You know, it's something that's it's unfortunately going to be there. So
I guess that's my question is, do these companies that are, you know, worried about the bottom line and it's about business and how do I improve my share price and so forth and so on, you know, are they staying one step ahead? Because anytime there's a lot of money at stake, anytime there's a lot of money that's to be had, there are going to be people out there that are going to do whatever they can to get it.
Yeah, I mean, they need to be. They absolutely need to be. You know, PokerStars has for many years now always talked about its security team and all the work that they do. You know, that they might not always put everything out there, but if they do find big things, it tends to get out there in the news and we find out about it. So we always know that PokerStars is really working behind the scenes. GG Poker now with their, you know, their rise to that top tier, you know, they've been pretty transparent with everything, almost like to a fault at times, like where it's like, why would you put this stuff out there where you don't want, you know, good players on your site and stuff like that? You know, maybe the messaging isn't exactly on point, A+, but they're trying to be as transparent as possible. And I give them credit for that. You know, I wish that some other sites would be a little bit more transparent with things. I mean, one example comes to mind was just WSOP.com with the stuff that happened with Eric Baldwin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just, it didn't seem like any of the news was coming from the operator. It all seemed like it was coming on social media from Eric Baldwin. And it's like, well, you know, what are you guys doing to you know, make sure that this stuff doesn't happen? You know, granted, this isn't like a, you know, a seat script thing or people reviewing hand histories or any of that sort of stuff. But it just makes me think, like, are you constantly actively working to fend this stuff off, whatever it may be, or to stop hiccups from happening? And yeah, operators need to dedicate time, resources. They need to have teams. They need to have budget allocated for this stuff, you know, just because, like you said, David, there's a lot of money at risk on these online sites, tons of money, huge guarantees, huge cash gains, all that sort of stuff. And, you know, an unfortunate side effect of having that stuff available is people are going to look for ways to get around the rules and get that money. So the only way to do that is to try and stay ahead of it as far as possible. I do think that, you know, these sites that do bring on the brand ambassadors, that they can help with that, because as an operator, you might not see everything. You might just be a business guy who understands, you know, the bottom line, understands spreadsheets, understands how to make money and all that sort of stuff. But a Daniel Negreanu for a GG Poker, an Isaac Haxton for a Party Poker, whoever it may be, can help you point out the things. Phil Galfond with Run It Runs Poker is obviously a really good example because he's the one running that whole site. You know, being able to point things out with what he's seen in the past, what the community is saying, bridge that gap, and then, you know, put it into motion with all of their practices to hopefully keep everything on the up and up.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my biggest fears. I would say that. I mean, just one of my biggest fears is, as an American, as somebody who lives in California, somebody who commentates on poker for a living, you know, selfishly, and I want poker in 38 states. But if we get bad headlines, if there is stuff like that, then, you know, it gives people who know nothing about our world, know nothing about poker, know nothing about online poker to go, oh, look, cheating, we can't have that. Let's get rid of it. Nope, you know.
Yeah, any security scandal will ruin an operator's opportunity for U.S. licenses, especially in certain states. To Tuck's point, I think we'd be lucky at this point if we could say that 1% of legislators really understood what online poker was all about. We're in the midst of or maybe at the beginning of a golden age for online gaming, and sports betting is coming fast and furious into the United States of America, into more and more and more states. With poker, I'm just worried that we're such a small fish in this big pond of online gaming that we have to be fortunate and hopefully attach ourselves to these massive sports betting opportunities. If you look at the numbers in New Jersey, look at what some of the companies made off online poker, and look at the total sports betting handle, you know, it's just night and day. I do think the future is bright for poker. I just need to make sure we kind of hang on for dear life, don't have any of these kind of security scandals, and then the future could be really bright. I saw that the BetMGM CEO said sometime last week that he foresees a world in which we'll see nationwide poker liquidity, just like the old days, in the next 10 years. And I would take that today. If you told me that by 2030, all of us in the U.S. could play against each other, potentially against the rest of the world, we'd sign up for that tomorrow. Is that likely to happen? I still don't think so, but it's promising. It kind of shows you the path that these operators foresee moving forward. I just think that any one scandal could, to Tuck's point, to Donnie's point, just absolutely ruin everything for poker.
I think
we need to, in the media, we need to constantly push the positive headlines. You know, it seems like every time poker breaks outside of poker and mainstream gets a hold of it, it tends to sway negative. And that's not a good thing, you know, because you hear about like, yeah, the corner store got robbed. Well, you're not going to not go to the corner store. Because you know it's safe. You know that's an anomaly. That's a one-off event. But so if us in the media, the four of us on here and all the other media members out there are just constantly trying to, put forward the positive stories, the winners, say, yes, online poker is safe. Yeah, this might have happened. This one thing might have happened and, people lost some money and they got scammed or whatever it may be. But that's not poker. I just feel like at times the mainstream media might take the negative things because they know that sells headlines, that sells clicks, all that sort of stuff. And like, that's what people want when in reality, these things, yes, they're there, but it's also not what poker is. So if we can just continue to do our best, constantly champion all the good stuff. Will brought it up right off the top, a Michael Adamo story. Like that's a really, really, really good story. Just get that sort of stuff out there as much as possible. And yes, we have to cover the other stuff. Unfortunately, we do, but we need to just constantly remind people that while this bad stuff might happen, it's 98% really, 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 really good and awesome, and everyone should have access to it.
I think what a year like this.
Can you guys stop interrupting Will, please? Okay. I mean, I know he's not American. I know he bashed us and everything.
Is there a delay? Is there a
He started it earlier. Like
and then yeah. No, I think what a year like this has done is all of us, I think, have adapted to the greater focus online. The operators have also adapted to a greater focus online for a number of reasons. And I think it's also meant that extra focus has been put on the game integrity units and the security of online poker, which, I have no doubt in saying that online poker is incredibly secure, that sites would not be able to exist if their money wasn't safe, if the hands were not real, and that the games were all fair and random. So when the stories do come out of any scandal or cheating or players getting banned, I'm not going to say inherently that's a good thing, because again, scandal leads to headlines, and headlines in poker, big ones, lead to mainstream media. And like Donnie said, the biggest ones are scandal. But in this year of all years, when scandals have made the headlines, they've been dealt with in a way that should reassure poker fans, both US and rest of the world, because that's the way you sort of balance the poker world currently, that sites not only take action, but feel like they have to take action. A year like this makes you focus on these things more. PokerNews will have changed itself over the last 12 months to focus better on online online operators and on online events. PocketFives will have done the same. Commentators will have also done the same to reflect this change, whether it's annual or ongoing, to the online sphere. And game integrity has done the same. Not changed anything. They're still doing exactly what they did, but with greater volume comes greater opportunity to check the games and vet the depositors and make sure that they are safe as possible, because that's the one I think that's the one thing that sells poker more, online poker specifically, to the most people, is that it is safe and easy to play.
Sure. And just to sort of wrap on this topic, we've been on it for a while, which is important. I want to make sure we get Jeff's take as well, as far as what the I think you had what the online will be, but what would be the big live poker story for 2021?
Yeah, live for me, it's hard to dispute anybody in how big the return is going to be. Perhaps a smaller boom, perhaps a record-setting World Series of Poker if we can hold it in its normal full force. I think a really intriguing secondary storyline is going to be the full-on return of one of poker's superstars, and that is Phil Ivey. We've seen Phil Ivey pop up in the last couple of years at a Triton event here and there, at a tournament in Rosvedov, but not a full-fledged return to the States. He's back, and from what I've heard from him, I had the opportunity to speak with him just for a couple of minutes, which I felt very honored to do, is considering he's declined multiple interview requests from myself. He says he's back. He says he feels free and that he's going to fire everything. So at everything that's going to take place at the Poker Go studio, you know, a US Poker Open, a super high roller bowl, a poker masters, high stakes poker, Ivy will be in the mix. I mean, he's just going to play anything and everything. I think he has a renewed passion to get back into the game. And I think that is so good for poker to have a guy like Phil Ivey, to have that kind of star power insert himself back into the world of poker, I think is huge. And I think that will be a big storyline when we look back at the end of 2021.
Are you and Ivy friends now?
You know, Tuck, I don't mean to brag about this, but I did ask him if he'd like to talk to me for High Stakes Poker. Maybe he was forced to do it for being a part of the production. Maybe he just thought I was really cool and, you know, he just wanted to interact with me a little bit. Tuck,
media obligations don't count.
Well, obligation is a strong word. Will, requirement. I think he genuinely wanted to sit down and chat with me for 10 minutes. That's on Phil Ivey's wish list for sure.
I think we need to check the tapes and see just how willing he is to sit there and
trust me
chat
on
with
this
you.
one, Will.
You're not Barry Greenstein where he sat and.
That's right.
I think I read that the only way that they could get Ivy to open up about his memories was to put Barry opposite him as almost the interviewer, and then they cut all of Barry's conversation apart from the questions. Is that true? Am I making that up? Like, that's because he needs to have a peer opposite him to bounce off with memories and things.
It was a pretty great show. That was produced by Poker King, and I know Thomas Keeling was involved in that a little bit. For those who haven't seen it, go ahead and check that out as well. It's the Conversations with Ivy on the Poker King YouTube channel. Of course, after you finish this episode of The Orbit. Guys, this is we're rounding into the last turn here. Last topic of the show, last topic of the year. And we wanted to do something sort of interesting. We wanted to sort of name the Orbit Poker Person of the Year for 2020. It doesn't have to be a player. It could be an industry person, a media person, an influencer. Of course, it could be a player. It's not like a competition of a GPI award or anything like that, but it's more the kind of thing of when someone would look back at poker in 2020, who would be that person that you think of that was the main story, that was the main thing, that was that person's year, 2020. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around the table once quickly for all four of you to just name your individual. And then we're going to go around one more time, one by one, a little bit more slowly, so each of you can make your case. After we do that, we're going to cast a vote. And, the person who gets the most votes, that's going to be the Orbit's Poker Person of the Year. In the event of a tie, I will determine. I will decide among the two or possibly three or four people who are tied with the most votes. So, David, we're going to start off with you. Who is your Poker Person of the Year?
I have two.
Oh.
My first one is, I'm a rule breaker. Sorry, guys. My first one is Jeff Platt.
Okay. And your second one?
You. And my second one is the one and only mythical Phil Galfond.
Okay, great. So, Will, who is your nominee for Poker Person of the Year 2020?
David's taken my stick. I have two. One for a playing and one for a poker as a year as a whole. I've already made the case for Michael Adamo, and as a year as a whole, Daniel Negreanu.
Got it. Okay. Jeff, who are you picking for Poker Person of the Year 2020?
Maury Eskandani. And yes, I am kind of sort of sucking up, but also believe that he deserves the nomination.
Okay. And Donnie, who is your pick for the Poker Person of the Year 2020?
I got Phil Galfond.
Interesting. Okay. So now it's time for all of you guys to make the case for these individuals, and then we will conduct a vote, see if anyone can change anyone else's mind. So, David, take it away.
Well, I said Jeff Platt. I mean, it was funny. I actually said Jeff Platt sort of as a joke, but it wasn't, because the more I thought about it, the more I was like, no, I'm so impressed by what he has done. And frankly, I know what it takes to excel at what he does. And he makes it look so easy. And he does such a great job. And, there aren't that many people, I think, in the world that do a great job at that. Poker is inherently really kind of boring, and to make it exciting and to make it fun is not easy. And Jeff Platt makes it look absolutely seamless. It makes it look really easy. And, I was so impressed with what he did with the World Series of Poker in the 2020, just COVID world, where he was able to bring that game to life and then, hand it off to me. And he just did it on his own. And I was so impressed by the way he built that Twitch stream and then all the stuff he's done at PokerGo. So, my hat's off to you, Jeff, for the job you've done this year. I think we as a poker community are very lucky to have you. Phil Galfond, it was my original pick. And the reason I thought him was just, he has always been kind of, he's kind of like, there are actors out there who appeal to girls and guys and everybody. And Phil Galfond's that. I mean, he is everything. He is the face you want to bring home to your mom when you say, hey, I'm going to be in poker, When mom's like, oh, poker? No, look, it's okay. This is the guy who does poker. It's this guy. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess poker's not so bad. It's Phil Galfond. And the job he's done, whether it was training and whether it was, his own site and these challenges and, the comeback with Veni Vidi where he captured all of our imagination and pulled off that kind of Rocky-esque comeback, being down 900,000 and then beating Action Freak. And also, the fact that he was a dad and a businessman and was kind of out of the poker world and was able to kind of jump back in and take on the best and excel. Just so impressive. So I don't think Phil Galfond, he's one of those guys who could get accolades all the time, but I don't feel like he actually gets the recognition he deserves. So, maybe this is the year.
You make a very strong case for two wonderful gentlemen in the poker world. Will, let's hear your case.
Again, when I was thinking about this, I was trying to think of you said at the beginning this is not a replacement for any sort of award ceremony or anything, but I was trying to think of what would someone need to do in order to be Poker Player of the Year. And if you focus on the poker, then I've already made the case for Michael Adamo. I think that it's been an incredible year for him. I'm sure he's very, very pleased with his results. And I think I reiterate that if COVID wasn't a thing, we'd be talking a lot about him in much the same vein that we've talked about Fedor or Justin Bonomo or various people in the past when they have had an exceptional year performing at the highest level and achieving some obscenely good results. So I take my hat off to him and I hope to see more of him at an equally high level in 2021. The Negreanu pick is, it seems like such an easy out with the longevity of this man's career, but Donnie mentioned earlier that he picked Gigi out not even this year. And then for Gigi to have the year that they have had, with Daniel along for the ride, then I'm not saying that he's the reason for their success, but it certainly has helped them no end to have a player of his caliber. No doubt, like when he was at Stars, having a say in certain aspects of how the site is run, putting all of his experience and all of his poker knowledge behind the machinery of such a rapidly growing poker site, and then you have the heads up match, which has dominated headlines and will continue to dominate headlines. Now, we talk about this new era of poker and the new age of players coming in, and will they still be interested in a Phil Ivey or a Phil Hellmuth and people of that era? Negreanu has shown that one, and I've forgotten the next point that I was going to make. But it's Daniel Negreanu. I think that's much of a point, and it feels in equal measure as a cop-out to say Negreanu because he has been such an influential figure in poker for so many years, but also to be such an influential figure after all these years in a year of 2020 is still pretty good in my book.
Another couple of great arguments there for another couple of great individuals. Jeff, let's hear what you have to say to make the case for Maury.
Yeah, first of all, Robbie, I got to thank Tuck for the kind words. They certainly meant a lot. And I'll just say that ride that we had during the World Series of Poker in the summer does not work without its closer. And Tuck was the closer night after night after night. And I thoroughly enjoyed, we haven't been able to really work together, but I felt like this was kind of a real partnership in the summer. And I have always associated your voice as like the voice of the World Series of Poker. So I was so happy to just be able to just hand things off to you. So again, appreciate the kind words, mean a lot coming from you. All right, Maury, my man, the boss man, the Poker Hall of Famer. So pre-COVID, we had new events like the Australian Poker Open, Super High Roller Bowl Australia, Super High Roller Bowl Russia. We had the second broadcast of the Global Poker Awards. Post-COVID, the virtual studio built for the Super High Roller Bowl Online Series, for the Poker Masters Online PLO Series. We had WSOP events on both WSOP.com and GG that turned into in-studio broadcasts. We had the return of high-stakes poker and Poker After Dark during a global pandemic. We had High Stakes Duel, which is quite the innovative heads-up format during a global pandemic. We had Negreanu versus Polt, a session of High Stakes Feud, again, one more time, during a global pandemic. And one man oversees Poker Central's production operations, and that man is Maury Escandani. And to be able to put out that kind of content in this kind of a year, I think is very valuable to the poker world, to the poker community. So that's why, Robbie, I nominate Maury. And if this can get me an extra gig in 2021, so be it.
I like it. Donnie, let's hear your arguments. I believe you said Mr. Galfond as well.
I did say Mr. Galfond. So, if I had to elect one person from 2020 to be the face of the game, the face of poker, to me, that's Phil Galfond. And quite honestly, I think it's Phil Galfond in a runaway. I mean, it's been a crazy, chaotic year, and he's really been that steady pillar that's always been there. Tuchman mentioned it earlier a little bit in regards to, he's a guy who wears many different hats. He's a businessman with the fact that he's the one running Run It Once Poker. He's also an entertainer and a creator in a lot of ways, with putting on some of the stuff that he had to do with the Galfond Challenge. He's obviously in charge of his team there that's putting that content out there and getting it out there. And then he's also, he's hopping on afterwards, doing the interviews, all that sort of stuff. He's also a player, and he's in touch with the community, in a rare way that I don't think a lot of the people that are, considered the business operators are as in touch with the community. I mean, because Galfond is the community, and just some of his thoughts throughout the whole year, like he's able to really put into words what a lot of people are thinking. He's feeling those same things himself. And I think that resonates a lot with people, So if I'm going to push one person from the community out there and say, this is the face of poker, to me, that's Phil Galfond.
I like it. Well, we've heard strong arguments for 5 individuals from four panelists who picked him. So the voting, just to explain it, we'll call out all 5 names. You are allowed to vote for yourself, and you're also allowed to not take offense if someone doesn't vote for you, Mr. Platt. So we're going to go with 5 names. We're going to take the vote, and we're going to crown, so to speak, the 2020 Poker Person of the Year here at the Orbit. So let's throw the first name out just by a show of hands, and you get to vote for one individual only. You've heard the arguments. Jeff Platt.
I'm just kidding. I'm not voting for myself, but I thought I'd throw up 2 hands, 2 votes. But no, 0 votes for me. Thank you.
All good. Daniel Negreanu. Michael Adamo. Phil Galfond. 3. And Maury Escandani.
Can I vote twice? Because I need to work also.
Well, we say we say vote early, vote often, but we've had all of the people monitoring the votes, and the votes are in. We've got 3 votes. Looks like the 2020 Orbit Poker Person of the Year is Phil Galfond, certainly someone who's worthy, and of course a former guest on this show in episode number 4. Everyone, I hope you guys hope you check out that show. And that brings us to the end of this show. Again, our last show of the year, number 7 here at the Orbit. It's our media special, and I want to thank all of our panelists for coming to join us: Will Shillibier, Jeff Platt, Donnie Peters, and David Tuchman. And to all of you out there watching and listening, we'd love to get your feedback. So please be sure to use #TheOrbit when sharing or leaving us a comment on Facebook, Twitter, and all your other social media outlets. I'm Robbie Strazynski. Happy holidays, everybody, and I'll see you next time on The Orbit.